Hi, Jack Canfield here. Welcome back to another segment of Talking About Success. My next guest is Nathan Castle. He's a lecturer, a workshop facilitator, and itinerant preacher who also happens to be a Catholic priest. He believes that God, however you experience God, loves you wildly, and I love that. Through events, book readings, retreats, and workshops, he helps people find their joy and follow it. So I want to start by asking you about this first book you wrote, and then we're going to get into your new book, which I think is more of the focus of it. But I just love it. First, I love the cover. Who could resist that
It's
cover,
beautiful.
that dog? And your sister designed the cover, you
That's
said.
right, yeah.
And it's called And Toto 2, The Wizard of Oz is a Spiritual Adventure. Can you just tell us a little bit about this book before we jump into the other one?
Sure. When I was a child, it was on TV once a year before you could have a VCR or anything. And the whole neighborhood would descend upon our house. People would, it was before the Super Bowl, it was like a Super Bowl party. And old people, young people, everybody stopped what they were doing to watch The Wizard of Oz, make popcorn, bring food. And we were a church family. I was in church every week. And I heard the Gospels, and I knew that there was supposed to be something that was calling us all together and making us be one. But what I really saw was The Wizard of Oz did it. And The Wizard of Oz was fun, and church was not all the time. The Wizard of Oz just made everybody want to be at the same place at the same time, and I just thought it has something in there, and it stayed with me through my life, and eventually I wrote about it.
It's my wife's favorite movie was The Wizard of Oz.
Is it?
And all of our sub-personalities show up in that movie.
Yeah.
It's very psychologically sophisticated
There's lots
as well as
going
a
on in
spiritual movie. Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking forward to reading that. So
Please do.
I will.
It's an easy read, too. You don't have to commit yourself to every last word. You can scan it and benefit.
All right. I'll keep that in mind when I read it.
You're a busy man.
Well, so are you. So a lot of your work focuses around healing people from trauma.
It does.
And why is that a focus for you, and what got you into doing that?
Partly The Wizard of Oz did. Dorothy gets hit in the head, remember? She's in a tornado, she gets hit in the head, and she goes on this whole journey. I don't know, I want people to be happy. I believe we were put here to be happy. And trauma is one of the things that, once you've been through a trauma, it isn't necessarily momentary. It can keep recurring. A lot of people have a traumatic loop going on in their head where they're forever afraid of the thing that traumatized them the first time or whatever. So sometimes it can just have a really long staying power in people, and it's attached to fear. And every time fear goes up, freedom goes down. Anytime you're afraid of a thing, you begin to say, well, I can't do that because I'm afraid. And you begin ceding over your own freedom to the possibility of what you might be because I'm afraid. And I think trauma is the basis of a lot of people's fears because they feel like I've already been through it and I know this would be terrible, and so I'm afraid. And anyway, if you could get trauma out of the equation, people's freedom comes back.
It's interesting. I was talking with Oprah Winfrey not too long ago, and she has a school for girls in Africa.
Yes.
Only to find out that almost 65% of them had been somehow sexually abused or raped. And they found that if they didn't deal with that trauma, the learning couldn't happen at the same level, that they have to deal with that. That was a breakthrough for them.
Sure.
And many people carry that kind of trauma on forever, whether it's PTSD from the war, from divorce, from childhood violence. So, and I don't think many people address that. So I'm really pleased that you're doing that.
And some of it can be it doesn't even have to be a traumatic event like rape or something. It can be neglect. Knowing that you're not safe because the people that are supposed to take care of you aren't capable of it. And sometimes it can be very low grade and over a long period of time. It's not just an event. It can be an environment that one lived in.
Interesting. Like poverty, and your parents are drug addicts and
all those
things like that.
Yeah.
Now, you're a Catholic priest.
I'm a Catholic priest.
Very good. Reflective listening.
You're so right, Jack. You're very intuitive.
So you're a Catholic priest. And does someone need to be Catholic or religious in order to get value from the work you do and the things you write about? I'm curious.
Well, the word Catholic means universal, and they have to be a member of this universe for me to be able to interact with them. So anybody that's in this universe, I think we could work together.
That's pretty inclusive.
Yes, I think so.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you talked about trauma, but how do you think trauma is holding people back? What's holding them back from that? Give us a little more insight into the work you do to help them free themselves from that.
One way that I work with people is I have a simple retreat that I call Changing Your Past. And my little logo is a kind of a graphic of a human brain with a pencil and an eraser erasing pieces of it. If you could go back into any part of your life and erase that episode, that period, what would your life be like? And so I do a retreat, sometimes a mini retreat that's 4 or 5 hours. Other times, sometimes I'll do one of those just to give people that have been traumatized, they sometimes need to develop a rapport and a trust with a speaker or somebody like me. And I'll do a mini retreat. And if they like what they experienced in a 4 or 5 hour session, then maybe I do a 2 or 3 day, or sometimes I'll come into a local church if they're the sponsoring group and do something over an extended period of time. But I believe in the Holy Spirit. Call it whatever you like, but the presence of God who's alive and around and within. And I say to people, do you believe that God, do you believe there is a God? Do you believe that God's everywhere? Do you believe that you're somewhere? I'll often ask, I'll pick on a woman and say, how much do you weigh? And they don't want to tell you, but I'll say, but you take up space, don't you? And so does God. If God's everywhere, aren't you inside God? Wouldn't it have to be that you're inside God? So if you're inside God and God's inside you, could I talk to God inside you who might be able to, or could you talk to God inside you in a way that reveals something that needs to be healed? I think the knowledge is inside, which is part of the Wizard of Oz story. It's all in you already.
Yeah.
How do you get, can we get the wisdom to come out of you so that today you can heal whatever is timely? It might not be everything, and it might not even be the worst thing, but is there something that could heal today so that we can have a kind of a positive momentum? Maybe we go on to the next thing later.
Cool. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Now, you have another aspect of work you do, which is interesting, to say the least. And you're talking about people that are stuck, and people that have died traumatic deaths or weren't prepared to die, died unexpectedly, and have not really fully. We talk about people passing over, and they haven't quite have fully passed.
Yes.
And you assist with that with people. So share that. Most people are not going to be aware of what you're talking about.
Well, anybody that's done any reading in that area is probably familiar with the idea of some sort of a light that attracted a person, or a tunnel that they went through, or maybe seeing their grandmother or some other deceased relatives that are saying, come with us. And some people, when they died traumatically, it's just all too much stimuli all at one time. I just got shot. I just got stabbed. I just was in a car crash. Everybody out. Just leave me alone. Or you might even call it resting in peace. I just need a moment. And it's like they missed their bus. Somebody came for them at the moment of their death, but they weren't ready to go. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with heaven, hell, or purgatory, or anything moral or ethical or religious. It's just overwhelm at the moment that everything came down. And then later, they show up in my dreams. And it's been happening for 22 years, so I have the routine down. I had one last night. And they show me how they died. So you'd think you'd wake up screaming, watching all these stabbings and shootings and drownings and stuff, but they're buffered, and I'm kept safe. The Lord loves me and is not going to harm me in my sleep because I'm his servant. I see what they show me, and then I get with a partner. We pray over it, and I'm usually able to help the person figure out where they should, who would they invite to come and have greet them? Would they trust anybody? The key question is usually, Jack, do you remember anybody that died before you did who loved you? And then if you come out with, well, my Nana, well then would it be okay if I said a little prayer and asked for your Nana? And if you say yes, all I have to do is say, God, please send Jack's Nana. And within 10 seconds, Nana's there. They're going, oh my God, there's Nana. I say, does she look scary? No, it's Nana. Well, do you think she's tricking you? No, it's Nana. Well, then do you think you're okay to go where she would lead you? Yeah. And then it usually doesn't take more than half an hour. Just a little bit of getting to know each other, and somebody comes, that's all.
You literally get unstuck. I love it.
They get unstuck.
Now, share with our audience here the story about Ray, how you first got into this.
I love that story. Ray was my first. He was.
How old were you when this happened?
I was probably 45, something like that. I was already a priest in my career, and I was just sleeping one night. And I'm a golfer, and I was dreaming about golf. I had finished a round of golf with a priest friend, and we were in the 19th hole. We were having a drink, and we were at a silent auction for a charity. And I've worked for charities my whole life, so it's no big deal to be in a silent auction. And but it's all a dream. And I look across the field of all these gifts, and there's this hideous picture, a painting on the wall, and I thought, who in the hell would give this to an auction? I mean, to a charity? It's so awful. I just had to get closer to it, to like looky-loos at a crash site. And when I got in front of it, I looked at it, and it moved toward me, and it started moving, and it was like a little movie. It was before the internet, but it would be like a YouTube. And it was this man sitting on the radiator of an old car from the late 50s with the fins and the big chrome. His feet were on the bumper, the hood was up behind him, and he burst into flames. Why would anybody be sitting on a car radiator like that, and what would make him blow up into fire? But he was screaming, and I woke up going, what was that? I knew it wasn't my dream material. The first part was, but not the man on fire. And so I knew that somebody was coming into my dreamscape on fire and screaming, and I thought, okay, well, I'm a priest. Somebody needs help. So I got with a prayer partner and said, I think somebody needs help. She had some spiritual gifts that I thought might be helpful, and they were. She said, this guy wants to talk really badly. Would it be okay if I let him talk? She had the facility to allow that. And so I said, okay. And his name was Ray. He died in 1960 in Georgia. We were warned, we were told that a female voice said, be careful, this one has not yet chosen the kingdom. But it's just be careful, not stay away, just be careful. So we said, okay, well, whatever. It turned out he had been taught that people die because God takes them, and who the hell does he think he is taking me when my life was just getting good? So he's mad at God, and God burned him up. Well, why would he want to be a part of the kingdom of God if God just burned him up in a fire? So we had to kind of back that out a little bit and question, who taught you that? Where'd you learn that? Did anybody ever say anything untrue about you or kind of misunderstand you? Maybe you've misunderstood God. But the big thing he wanted, when you're in a counseling thing, even you help people, but you can be most helpful by asking them what they want.
Exactly.
And once they tell you what they want, then your work is easier. You can start trying to give them what they want. Well, I said, Ray, what is it you want? He said, well, my wife is got cancer, and she's going to die, and I can't greet her the way I am. And I said, oh, well, then we need to figure out the way you are. The problem was he died in 1960, and it was now like 1996 or 7, and he had practically nothing to show for all that time. And I said, well, your wife's cancer has got its own calendar, and it's not going to wait on you. I'm going to have to hurry you through. We're going to have to make up for lost time and figure out what's the matter with you and how we get you ready to greet your wife when she passes. So that was our common work.
Very good. So finish the story with Ray. What happened?
Well, it took 3 sessions. I was new at this, and so was the partner my prayer partner that I was working with. But we just got to know the guy and talk to him and do the best we could, figure out. And it kept coming through to me that he was isolated and angry. He hadn't been in normal conversation with anybody. So at one session I said, well, what if we got you at least started with somebody? Did you know anybody that died before you that loved you? No, I don't think I asked that question to him. I said, well, what about your dad? We had mentioned his mom, but his mom used to beat him while he said his prayers. Why? He didn't know. But I thought, well, maybe mom's not the perfect
Well, that could drive
person
you away from religion a little bit.
It could, and I thought maybe she's not the safest person to invite in the room just yet. So what about your dad? Well, he died when I was 10, and I was kind of afraid of him. He died in the war. And I said, Vietnam? No, Korea. Okay. Well, did you guys ever have a great time together? Was there ever a great father-son moment? And he said, yeah, we went and looked at cars. And I said, well, would it be okay if I invited him to come and join you, and you could check, see whether you wanted to be around him or not? And he agreed to that. So I said, God, would you please send Ray's dad here if he's available and would like to see his son? 10 seconds, he's going, oh my God, look over there. And I said, what do you see? I can't see what you're seeing. Well, it's my dad. Well, does he look scary? No, he just looks like my dad. I said, well, do you think he's tricking you? Do you think you're safe? Yeah, I think I'm safe. So I said, well, why don't, I'm going to go now. You guys go do something for a while, and I'll catch you in a week or 2. We'll see how it's going. We did a little, we got a little update on that. And by that time, Jack, I was pretty sure I knew what the problem was. He was just He died when he was 20, and he was just kind of an arrogant young guy, kind of full of himself, which is not that uncommon among 20-year-old guys,
sure.
you know? Or older guys for that matter, but 20-year-old, yeah. So I was saying, could you just chill? Could you, do you realize that you're not going to be the only person around when she dies? She's now in her 60s. She's loved a lot of people besides you, but you're very important. She was only married twice, and you're the only dead husband. You're only going to be the only one on this side that can greet her. She only had one child, and it's yours. You are huge in this lady's life, but you're just not the whole of it. Could you just imagine yourself being in a group, probably a smaller group, of a few friends and neighbors, including you, as she passes? And he digested that. He didn't like it. He grumbled a little bit because I was pushing him harder than I would a normal counselee because of the schedule. And the next time I saw him, I said, "How's it going, Ray?" "Well, my wife passed." I said, "Well, that's big news. Tell me about how that went." He said, "Well, I did what you said, and she passed, and I got to be there, and you'd been proud of me. I was a perfect gentleman." I said, "I knew you had it in it all along. All you needed to do was just be that gentle soul." And I said, "Our job here is done, isn't it?" And he said, "Yeah, I think so." So we kind of thanked each other, and I said, "You know, Ray, that now that you know how to greet people when they pass, you're an official afterlife greeter. I wonder if you'd keep an eye on me, and when it's my time to pass, I wonder if you'd mind being there in the welcoming party." And he said, "Sir, I'd be most proud. Just look for the perfect gentleman." So I don't know when my day will be, but I'm counting on Ray to be part of the welcoming party.
So you, in your book, you talk about the different reasons people get stuck.
Yes.
And I think you said there's about 12 of them that we don't have time for all 12, but could you give us an example of a couple of the reasons?
I've had about 250 of them by now, and so they kind of cluster. One of them is simply overwhelm, like I've kind of alluded to. It was just so overwhelming to die traumatically that they just couldn't process much of anything and just wanted it all to stop. And so they isolated.
Kind of like a person who goes unconscious in the face of like just too much stress.
Yeah, and like even when people are in car crashes, their body shuts down, and the last thing they remember was the screeching of the tires, and then they woke up in the hospital.
Forget the rest
Or
of
they
it.
were talking to somebody in the ambulance, but they don't have any memory of it. I think our system, God built us in such a way that we don't have to have a vivid experience of every second of trauma. I think we're spared some of it.
Right.
So sometimes they're just overwhelmed. Sometimes they, I've had a few that were very concerned about their reputation, what others thought of them, and they died in a compromising way that blew their story. They died in the arms of their lover or their illicit lover, or something about them became public in a way that embarrassed them, and the narrative at their funeral became, "Oh my God, did you know he was this or that?" And so I've had a few of those. Another kind is people that were isolated kind of by lifestyle before they passed. People who usually are pretty depressed or broken. This one lady, she died. No, it wasn't that she died. She was a carpooler in the 60s, and she backed over and killed a child. And she was drunk. She said she was a tippler. Do you know that word, tippler?
Tipple, I do.
She tippled, and she ran over a kid. And it ruined her whole life. She lost her marriage, she lost her kids, she lost her freedom. And then she ended up, after she was released from jail, she just lived in this little apartment that looked over an asphalt parking lot, and she smoked until she died. And she passed like that. But she remembered that her mom used to visit her in prison. So it was her mom that we got to come and say, "Well, this place is no worse than prison. Your mom was willing to go into a prison. She'd come here right now and help you get out of here." And that's the way it worked. So
Interesting.
lots of stories.
Interesting. Well, I can't wait to read the book. I'm really excited about it. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about you and your work, where do they go?
Well, they can go to my current website, which is nathan-castle.com. It's about to be revamped, but it'll still have that name. The book on Toto is ntoto.org. So those two places.
Great. Well, I wish we had 2 hours. This should be a full documentary here, but we only have this amount of time. So thank you very much. This is fascinating.
I've enjoyed being with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage you, check out his website, check out his books. This is, I don't know, it touched me at a very deep level just talking to you. So thank you for that. And I think one of the things that I take away from it, and that I hope everyone takes away from this, is that we do go on.
Absolutely.
You know, that we don't stop existing just because we've dropped our body.
And some of these people died in such horrible ways, and then they have these resilient stories afterwards.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, thank you for watching. This is our last episode for this week's show, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.